welcome to the Connected Mom podcast. I am Becky Harling, your host. And, we are in the holiday season as we are recording this. And I raised 4 kids. I loved Christmas. I mean, I was that crazy mother that raced all over town to get the perfect gifts for my kids. I loved it. I decorated. I mean, my husband and I often joked that I was like Mrs. Claus and he was a little bit like Scrooge. And, he would tell me, well, they don't really need that much. And that was true. But, I just wanted to make Christmas so special for our kids. And my husband was in the pastorate. So we had sometimes 4 Christmas Eve services, and I never wanted the kids to resent that. Anyway, I was that over-functioning mom who did everything to make the holidays great for her kids. And I loved Christmas and Thanksgiving. And then my kids grew up and got married. And I remember realizing, oh, they now have 2 families and I have to share. And as much as I wanted my kids to be able to have time with all their in-laws, there was a part of me that really missed them or felt like, well, why can't they just be with me every holiday? And that's not realistic. So today, we're going to have a conversation. I love Peggy Sue Wells. She has written like over 45 books. I think over 100, she told me. She's like the real deal. Sometimes you will see her name as P.S. Wells on covers. Sometimes you'll see Peggy Sue Wells on covers. But she and I both have raised adult kids and we have good relationships with our kids. And yet we want to be able to talk about this whole idea of, letting our kids be free during the holidays, not putting exorbitant expectations on them, which honestly, for those of us moms that really loved being moms, that can be a little bit of a challenge. Peggy Sue is also, or was, well, she still is, a single mom. And so that adds another whole wrinkle to the story. And so we just want to have an honest conversation that hopefully is going to inspire you as moms to do everything in your power to cultivate that deep connection with your adult kids by releasing them to be where they need to be for the holidays. So welcome, Peggy Sue. It's delightful to have you back.
Becky, it's always good to talk with you.
And you are such the real deal. I always think there are real writers and those of us who are trying to become real writers, and you are a real writer, girl. You have written so many books. Holy moly. And you have been a single mom. So tell us, first of all, about how old your kids were when the divorce went through and just a little bit about that journey and how that impacted future holidays.
Oh, wow. It really has a huge impact on all holidays. And you are a real author. And I write all these books because I stink at math. And so writing is what I go back to.
I'm not good at math. Most of us that write are not good at math. We need other people to figure out the contracts and all that. But go ahead.
Yeah. I have 7 children, 6 daughters, 1 son. My son is the middle child out of the 6 girls. And the baby was a year old when my single mom journey began. So she has no recollection of ever living in a home that wasn't a single mom home, whereas the older ones were at different ages as that happened. And with us, it was a high conflict divorce. They didn't have that term years ago, but it is a term now. And it's where it doesn't go easy. It lasts and it drags on for a long time. It's very hard. The children, of course, are in the middle, so that's very difficult. And so as the children grew up, there was, we had a separation over the holidays. The holidays is so hard for single moms because it's this massive just reaffirmation of things are not the way they're supposed to be, because there are 2 Thanksgivings and there's 2 Christmases, and and you go back and forth, and how do you split a day? And it's really difficult. And then as they grew up, they got married, got their own mortgages. And like you said, they have in-laws. And So now, if I'm looking at my kids, they're trying to divide their time between three different families, and they're not all in the same zip code. So they've got, a lot of ways to different go. So what I did to help them, most of them all live closer to their in-laws than they do to me. So I just said, you know what, let me make this as easy for you as possible. The day we get together is a great day, and it doesn't matter if it's actually the day. And for some people, the day is very important. For me, it's just important to get the kids together. So I years ago said the Saturday after Thanksgiving, the Saturday after Christmas will always be the gathering at Mimi's house. I get to be Mimi to my grands. And so, isn't that fun? And so that way it's on the calendar. It doesn't change. If people have, work things and other family things and whatever, they just know they always have this one day. And then the key that I gave them, and this is all because God has guided me through some really rugged emotional situations, but what I tell them is you are always invited. You are never obligated. And that kind of let them just go, you know.
Yeah, I'm learning to say that to my kids too. And it was a journey. But I began to say to them, I want you to feel invited, but I don't want you to feel pressured, because pressure never feels good to anybody, and the way it works in our family is the kids are with us. If we have them all for Thanksgiving, then they're with their in-laws for Christmas. If we have them for Christmas, they're all with their in-laws Thanksgiving. And so we kind of go back and forth because the kids all wanted to be kind of on the same schedule so that when they were with us, they were all together, and now we have all the grandkids, and of course they like it when they're with their cousins. So I mean, it's a whole thing. What were you like when your kids were younger, Peggy? Was Christmas a big deal to you? Were you like me, the over functioning mom?
Yes. Yeah, all the things and all, don't want to miss an event, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like I can remember one, different Christmases, but one in particular, one of my daughters wanted turtle doves. And I'm like, okay, fine. And so like, you're turning over all these, connections and all these stones to find two turtle doves. And they were under the tree at Christmas.
Wow, that's impressive. I mean, I remember the year that I had bought my daughter a doll, and then I realized that everyone else in her first grade class, that was a big deal that year, was getting this doll where, you put ice on the cheek and this little, I don't know, a heart appears or something. And so then I realized, oh, I've got a huge problem. I got her the wrong doll. So I literally was racing all over Phoenix area at the time we lived there. And I think I found the last doll that had that, and I look back and I think, does she even remember that doll? I don't know. But it doesn't really matter, and then there was all the years of the American Girl dolls, right? And you probably did that for your girls too. Yeah, we did too. And but the memories are precious. What were some of your traditions, Peggy Sue, that you did with your kids?
When we moved to Indiana, which was in 95, I actually stopped putting up a Christmas tree, and I put up on a table with glass and this beautiful tablecloth. But then on top of that is a very large nativity scene. And so we put that up, and then behind it we have a lit palm tree, which was probably what it looked like in Israel at the time. But we lived in South Carolina on the beach for a while, and so those palm trees are special. So we have this lit palm tree, and then there's the nativity, and then the gifts all go down around that. And so that's what we've done instead of the other, and we really like it. And my kids have grown up, and they all have trees, which they grew up with trees, part of their lives too.
Yeah. I mean, we put up our Christmas tree. I mean, I am an advocate for putting it up early, so I get the eye roll from my husband, but he's been very gracious. We've been married 46 years. So, it's like, okay. So this year he was in Africa, got home right before Thanksgiving, and I surprised him because I had two of the grandsons who are old enough put up the tree, and I hired another two to put up the lights so that my husband didn't have to worry about any of that. But I love all those traditions. We used to do stockings on Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve pajamas and all the things, but then as your kids get older, there are changes. Now, I imagine that that was challenging for you, especially because there was this, what did you call it? A high, whatever
High
divorce?
conflict. Yeah, high
High
conflict divorce.
conflict divorce. First of all, tell us
Right.
what a high conflict divorce is, and then tell us how you work that through.
Yeah, generally one of the spouses in it generally has my attorney explained it that there's some sort of emotional or mental kind of like issues that are going on there. And so they just don't go away. They don't quit. It just continues on and on and on. And there's a lot more of that going on. You'll hear people talk about a narcissism in a spouse or borderline personality disorder, those kind of things. So those are the ones that tend to just drag out for a really long time. Once in a while you find somebody who's just mean or somebody who's angry, and it can get ugly. The other thing too is I realized that the more I gave somebody something to push against, they pushed. But when I stopped having anything to push against, and so that was some of the shifts that I had to make myself. And
What do you mean by that? Explain that a little bit. When you
oh
gave
gosh,
them nothing to push against, what
yeah.
does that look like?
Okay, so having the day, my Saturday is my Saturday. So then, of course, what's going to happen? Then the other side is going to say, well, I want Saturday. And so, what do I do with that? Do I share the day? Do I say, hey, let's not? Do you fight? My attorney said that during the holiday season is when they get more calls from their clients than any other time of the year, because you have these agreements that Christmas is this day and Thanksgiving is that day, and this side has them and this side has them when they have them. And there's always one that chooses not to stick with the agreement, and then everything goes out the window and there's all this extra emotion. So as much as possible to just not fight against those things, even though sometimes what people are doing is wrong. And sometimes when people are super mean, I've just had to learn to say, that's just them being them again. That's just how they're going to do it. So one of the issues that we went back and forth on was medical insurance that was supposed to be covered. And yeah, that's what the agreement was, but that doesn't mean it was always there. And so after a while, I quit fighting that, and I just took care of it on my own. And so then it wasn't an issue. So little things like that. That it was more of a, I have to now trust God, not trust this other source to take care of, whether it's medical, whether it's car insurance, whether it's whatever. That I just need to step up and do it, rather than, because if I start pushing like, hey, we need this, where is it, you're supposed to, then we just do this all the time. Because some people like that, some people like just the fight, and I don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Now, how did all this impact your kids? And you had mentioned something to me before we started recording about how you had to kind of shift some of the communication, for lack of a better way to describe that. You describe it in your words because yours were more profound.
yeah, what would happen is we have 8 of us. If all 7 of my kids would come home and me, we have 8 people that are very heartbroken and we're very wounded. And then there's always activity on the other side, things that are being said, what's being, whatever. So there's, and they're in the middle. And so we would get together, and you have 8 very heartbroken humans in the same room. And at one point, somebody's, happy, somebody's mad, somebody's hurt. We were all of it in this soup. And so I noticed that what we were doing is we would get together and we would emotionally abuse one another and have pie. And I was like, oh, Lord,
What did that look like? Can you give us an example for somebody listening who's like, okay, I need to hear about this because I'm afraid that's what we're doing, and I need to know what she means. Do you have an example?
things are said that hurt. And things are like, you're supposed to show up at a certain time. So somebody wouldn't show up on time. They show up late. It throws everybody else off. Do we wait? Do we not wait? Just little things. And then just the little barbs that come out. It's like, it's not enough to like start a fight, but it was like that hurt. And I would describe it as, at the end of the day, when everybody left, I felt more sad than I was when they first walked in the door. And it's just like, oh, and then when I call him, it's going to be awkward next time and that sort of thing. So we laid down a couple of rules, but God had to show me something that I call the 5 hour parade. So when, yeah, 5 hour parade, the 5 hour parade. When the children were all home, we had to make a rule that said you don't have to try to make somebody else feel different than you do. Like one would be happy at the moment, one was mad, one was hurt. It's like, own your feelings. You can have them. Don't try to tell somebody else that they have to feel differently than they do. And also don't take your feelings out on any of the rest of us, because we can't do that. So we established that. Then later, as they got older and I was realizing when we're coming home, it's not looking really good, I talked to God about it. I'm like, God, I grew up with this. I wanted to have something different. I don't want this pattern in my family. And so my best example is my daughter Hannah, when she was home as a teenager, woke up one Saturday morning. She's real grumpy. So I fixed her pancakes and tea to cheer her feelings, did the mom mode. And she just pushed that pancake around and didn't cheer up. So now I'm feeling rejected. I did these things for you and you're not accepting. And so I feel rejected, and I don't like feeling rejected, but rejection is the first R. When something is said, not done, that I feel rejected. After rejection, I move into resentment because rejection feels ucky and I don't like it. And so then I'm resentful that I'm feeling rejected. Then I move into resistance. Resistance is, okay, fine. You're not going to talk to me. I won't talk to you. You're not going to look at me. I won't look at you. So if you've ever given or received the silent treatment, that's resistance. And then the next one was revenge. When I speak it out loud, it makes no sense. But when our heart is hurting and it's been hurt by somebody, humans have this automatic response where we try to hurt them back, almost so that now you'll know how it feels. It's ridiculous, but we do it. I was just into the revenge cycle when I was about to say to her, hey, have you checked out your bathroom lately? Like, when are you going to clean that thing? And so had I said that, that would have been a barb to her heart. And her natural response would have been, backpedal out of that. Mom's on the warpath. Who knows why, but give her space. So that revenge would have distanced us. And then that when we go into repeat, because as she would distance further from me, then I go into repeat where I feel rejected again. And so, yeah, we do this. We do this at home. We do it at work. We do it at church. We do it in our community. It's everywhere. We are in the 5 R's with somebody somewhere. So I was about to say to her about her bathroom, and I kind of felt God tap me on the shoulder, like, remember that thing we've been talking about? And I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, all right, if I'm going to hurt her if I say one more word. So instead I just calmed and I said to her, Hannah, the story I've made up in my head is that you would rather be anywhere else on Saturday morning than here with me because I stink as a mom. And she kind of like blinked and looked up at me, almost like she was coming into the current century. And she said, I just found out the boy I babysit has leukemia. It had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Oh, that's such a good illustration, Peggy Sue, because we do this all the time. We make meaning in our head and we don't clarify that meaning with the other person. And as a result, we lose the connection, and here at the Connected Mom, we're actually all about connection. So if we're going to keep that with our adult kids, we've got to clarify meaning,
And it goes even sooner than that. What I realized is people do what they do for their own reasons, and it rarely has anything to do with us. We are all just on this planet doing our best to live the best life that we can. I'm not generally purposely hurting somebody. Occasionally you meet somebody who does, and you're just, after you realize it, you're like, that's just them being them again. And you just keep moving. Most people are not trying to hurt us. But that idea of taking that fact of she was grousing around the house, in my mind, I made up a story. We always make up a negative story. People say, oh, I couldn't write fiction. They're like, I can't write fiction. I'm like, honey, you're doing it every day because we make up stories. And then that story in my head becomes my reality. And that's then how I behave toward you based on this. And you're like, I have no idea why she's being weird. It's because this is my reality, and it's based on nothing. It's not factual. So one of the things that we've learned to do is to go back to the facts. And if I'd have gone to the facts, which is have a teenager who's grousing around the house on a Saturday morning. How normal is that? And eventually, right? Eventually, if she wanted to, she would tell me what's going on. But if I'd have left it at that fact, I would not have felt rejected. And so later on, of course, with these six daughters, we've had six weddings. If you want to have drama, have a wedding. And so it just,
Absolutely.
and at one point, one daughter was planning the seating arrangements for the shower. And so she says to me, Mom, I need to know, is your friend coming? And I said, you know what? I don't know. I've called her twice. I invited her. I called her twice. I've not heard back. I don't know if she's coming. And my daughter at that moment said, Mom, what are the facts? I'm like, oh, the facts. The facts are I invited her. I called twice. I haven't heard back. You know what? I'll call again. She caught that I had already made up a story about my friend not calling me back. And so that's what we're working on. The girls will say to me, I'll say to them once in a while when we see this emotion ratcheting, it's like, what are the facts? So we've learned to not go into the 5-hour parade if we go back to the facts. When I find ourselves, because facts free you from false feelings. Facts free you from false feelings. And then with the resentment, gratitude heals what resentment steals. So it's gratitude. I'm thankful that even though my kid didn't invite me or tell me what they were doing, I'm thankful that they're adults, they're contributing part of society, they have friends, they have a life. I'm grateful. And then resistance, when most pull back, the best lean in. And so we engage and we have a conversation. And sometimes we just blow over the fact that they were rude last time we saw them and we just move forward. And then the revenge is be generous. You have to
Yeah,
be
I love
generous.
that. You
You have
have
to
to
give.
be, especially as being the mom, you have to be generous. And the more generous you are, the better it goes. So, okay, let's talk about this holiday coming up. I mean, we're right on the cusp of Christmas, Peggy Sue. And so, what will you be doing Christmas Day?
Um, Christmas Day, I'll probably get together with a local child that, she's a newlywed. And so she's like, Mom, let's get together. And so I'll get together with her. But then Saturday, and I don't mind being alone, but then I also have a pile of friends. My co author, Max Garwood, him and his wife are my best friends here. And they always invite me over if they think I'm not going to be at a kid's house for the actual holiday. So it's nice to come alongside and invite somebody. I invite the widow down the street to come to our holidays because she needs to be with somebody. So I don't be alone unless I'm choosing to be alone to write because I want to do that. But because I go find friends, because that's the other thing. When we have this empty nest, one of the best gifts we give our kids, we have to be healthy. I have to have a healthy life. I
We have to have friends. And I think that's a really important point that often doesn't come up in a conversation about letting go of our kids. If you have good friends, get together with your friends. I was just telling my husband the other day, I am so thankful for the dear friends I have in this season of life. They're precious to me. And having lunch with them, or going out and having dinner with them, or doing a Bible study together, taking a day of prayer together. I mean, those friendships, it helps us not put too much pressure on our kids to be all to us, because our kids were never designed to be all to us,
yeah. And it's
And
our responsibility to be a parent that our adult children enjoy being around. That's up
thank
to us.
you. Would you say that again, please, Peggy? Because I feel like that's so important for our moms to hear. It's because I hear the kids get blamed a lot. And I'm like, no, 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 honey, that's
Right.
on you.
It's our responsibility to be the parents that our adult children like to be with. And one of the ways that I see that sometimes it's a block to that, we spent our life changing diapers and telling them to brush their teeth and not to pick their nose or anybody else's. And we take them all the way through and they become an adult one day. And they become an adult one day. They turn 18. And, in our society, you're an adult. And that's not all that odd for them because the whole thing we've been doing is we've been preparing them. We've been raising adults. So they just go off into what we've always been planning on. For us, there's not a whole lot of how do you shift? How do I shift from I told them what to do, I gave them all this advice, I monitored things to now we're adults together. I was mom, child. Now we are adults together. And so I've had to say, am I treating my adult child the way I would treat a treasured adult friend? Am I speaking to my child the way I would speak to a treasured adult friend? Am I expecting from my child only what I would expect from a treasured adult friend? And that saves, a lot of it. Also, the kids, they already know what they want to do. If they have questions, they go to it. This generation goes to the experts online. They don't come to mom and grandma anymore. And so in that case, sometimes I'm like, there's something there that I know they need to know. Like I see one of them making a choice and I'm like, gosh, there's more there. But they already know how I feel about most everything. So I don't nag them about that. They know. So don't be a nag. But then I have said, are you open for feedback? And I hold that back. I don't say it a lot, but I say, are you open for feedback? A couple times they've said no. One daughter, twice I've said that to her in her adult life. Are you open for feedback? And she says, I know you have something to say, so just say it. And so I tell her, I said, I will support, and I say this to the kids, I will support whatever choice you make. While you're making your decision, I just wanted you to know there's this other option and there's this whole other avenue that this is another tool that you can put into your toolbox while you make your decision. And I have gotten calls from another kid who has said, you're not hearing this from me, but she did decide to do what you had opened her eyes to do. And I'm like, that's good. But the other thing too is when we've got kids, what kid will talk about the other child?
That's complicated, yeah, because we don't want to get in the middle of that. We want to encourage them to go to each other. And, as mothers of adults, kids, we don't do that perfectly, right? I mean, I've blown it from time to time, but there's always room to grow as a mother of adult kids. And whenever I blow it, for me, I know that that's a signal I need more time on my knees because when I don't want to give my kids advice. So when I'm overly tempted, I know I need to take that to the Lord, get on my knees, pray scripture over them so that God gives them the wisdom that they need in that moment, and this whole idea of adult kids, I mean, it's a long journey, isn't it, Peggy?
Oh, it is. And then, grandkids come along and
Yeah.
when one needs to come and vent about another, I've learned to just let them vent. Sometimes that's a gift. I can be a safe place for them to vent. When they're all done, I will say to them, and I know you guys are both adults and I trust that you will work it out because I need to stay out of the middle because it's their thing and it's not, I don't need to take on a monkey that's not in my circus.
Yeah, yeah. I always remind myself, not my monkey, not my zoo, and just reminding myself, okay, this child, they may be upset with that other one, but they need to talk and I can pray, and I don't always do that perfectly. I mean, I want to be upfront in saying that. I mean, we're all learning and growing, right? And so the good thing is when we blow it, there's always forgiveness. I always go back to the story of Mary mothering Jesus. And I mean, talk about a complicated relationship. Her kid was perfect. I mean, and knowing that journey of letting go was going to begin the moment that baby was born, who was the Son of God, Jesus, and in our lives, really, the journey of letting go also starts in infancy. When you say to the Lord, I realize this child is not mine, this child is a gift from God. I will mother as best I can, but this child belongs to you, Lord. And I mean, Mary had to do that Jesus' whole life. We go to the wedding of Cana, and I've often wondered when I get to heaven, I really want to sit down and have a conversation with Mary and find out, yeah, what were those feelings for you? All of a sudden she's trying to say, hey, my kid, my son, he can fix this situation for you, and Jesus is saying, Ma, it's not my time yet. And yet, he's very gracious to Mary. And I love that Jesus is gracious to Mary because it reminds us in this season that Jesus is gracious to you as a mom. And maybe that's a good place to end today, Peggy Sue, because I think for those of you that are moms that are listening in, some of you have gone through a really messy divorce and you're having to share the holidays, and you don't want your kids to feel torn, but they do, and you're trying to solve that, and you've got to manage your own hurt feelings. Some of you haven't gone through a divorce, but your kids are older now and they really love their in-laws, and that's a beautiful thing, because at the end of the day you want that. You want as many healthy relationships for your kids as possible, but it can still sting a little bit. And God might be reminding you today, hey, take the element of competition out here. It's more like Lord is going to give you wisdom about how to have a healthy relationship with your older kids. I love what Peggy Sue said about it's really on you to have your kids want to be with you. And I want to reiterate that, because sometimes I hear mothers of adult children just blaming their kids. And it's like, it's on you, mom. So be the mom that they want to be with. And, look at Peggy Sue's 5 R's. Hey, Peggy, where can we get those 5 R's so that our audience can go look at that
Yeah.
parade of R's?
Yeah, you can find them on the Single Mom Circle website. There's a free download of the 5 R's, so you can kind of just post them up and check them. And I learned to not complain to my kids about the time I don't have with them when I am with them. It's just enjoy that time. Enjoy that time. And when they're adults, to not always ask, it's not my business what they're doing. So like this Saturday, or our Thanksgiving on Saturday, on the other side of the family, somebody else built the same time. They booked the same time. So some of my kids cut out early, but you know what? I didn't ask where they were going. I didn't ask any of that, because they're adults. They can handle their life. I'm not going to pressure them. I just want them to feel welcome when they're here, and then I will wave them and tell them to have a lovely day when they leave.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I think it's one of the most important conversations we've had, because some of you are those moms where you are letting go of your kids. And it's so important that we do that well. And I want to remind you that Jesus is for you. And as you are letting go, he understands every nuance of your heart, even the feelings that may not make sense to you or to your child. Jesus understands that. So go to him with those feelings. Keep praying for your adult kids. They need it just as much as when they were toddlers, probably even more. And so I want to thank you, Peggy Sue, for joining us today. And we will have Peggy Sue's resources in the show notes for you today. So thanks again for joining us. And hey, if you know another mom that's letting go of her kids or is an empty nester, would you share this episode with them? Because if you enjoyed it, chances are they will as well. So we hope we've given you a lot to think about today. Thanks for joining us.